you. And welcome. Good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started here. We've got another event across town, so there may be a few stragglers, but we're going to go ahead and get started. So my name is Matt Pontus. I'm Assistant CEO with the County of Santa Barbara, and I want to welcome you and thank you for being here with us tonight. For those of you watching on CSB TV and Channel 20, and we're also live on the county's Facebook page at County of SB. So if you know anybody who cannot be here or watch the live stream, this video will be available tonight on Facebook and on the county's YouTube channel. In just a moment, you're going to hear from the chair of the County Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Doss Williams. But first, I'd like to recognize some other folks who are here. So tonight we have Chris from Congressman Carvajal's office here with us tonight. We've got Chief Kevin Taylor, Montecito Fire Department. We have Chief Deputy Craig Bonner with the Sheriff's Office. On my right, we have Rob Lewin with the Office of Emergency Management. Suzanne Grimacy, who's here tonight from our County Behavioral Wellness, who's also representing the Community Wellness Team and Hope 805. We're always feel warm and welcome here when we have Anthony Rainey here, who is the Montecito Union School District Superintendent. Thank you for having us tonight. We have Eric Bolt here from the National Weather Service. And in the back of the room, we have Lieutenant Logie with the California Highway Patrol, and John Fry with our Flood Control District. I think I got everybody. And Joe Black here next to me with the Independent Living Resource Center. And she's providing tonight's American Sign Language interpretation. So before we start the program, please welcome Chair of the Board of Supervisors, Doss Williams.
I want to begin just by giving a shout out to the Montecito Association, who always sends this out to their members, and their chair, Charlene Nagel, is in the back in the sweater, so let's give her a round of applause too. Well, it is not without adjustments, and we'll detail some of that tonight, but most of the things that are happening are very good news. I want to highlight a couple of them. One, of course, is the county is embarking upon a substantial amount of mitigation projects to increase our flood control capacity in the area. That isn't the subject of tonight, but it should be noted. The mapping has become more precise and easier to use, which will be detailed tonight. And this last storm, as much as it brought back to many some scary memories, and to some people in the upper watershed, some noisy rocks coming down, it was perfect for what we needed. It was at the high end of our predictions. It really showed that the storms that are have less intensity than our threshold, we really don't have to worry all that much about. And it really showed that we're set the threshold at about the right place for evacuations, because a decent amount of material did come down, and we believe that anything larger might have had some other results. So And of course, lastly, it's exactly what we need to make sure that we have vegetation regrowth. Because all of, the angst that this community has had about the FEMA interim advisory map or about our evacuation maps, I hope that you'll put it in the context of the temporary state of our watershed. It's still a bad scene up there. There's a good amount of vegetation regrowth, more than many people were expecting, more than the experts were expecting. But that soil is still waxy. It is still water resistant. There is still a danger. But when we look at these maps and when we consider the advisory flood control map, we should also take into account that those conditions in their entirety will not exist forever. It is what we are dealing with until the watershed recovers. So with that, I want to turn it over to our county and Montecito Fire District personnel to really lead you through the protocols and what is happening now and the new maps. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as you can see on the screen here to my right, we've got some discussion items tonight. We're going to go do a brief overview of the new risk map that the supervisor was just talking about. We're going to go through some evacuation discussions. We're going to talk a little bit about our new Ready, Set, Go preparedness that you heard at the last meeting. We have a quick update from the schools and an update on our community wellness and our emotional support. And at the end, we're going to have an opportunity for questions and answers, and we'll look forward to that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rob Lewin, our Director of Office of Emergency Management.
Thank you, Mr. Pontus, for everything, and particularly for your leadership throughout the entire disaster. We're all better because of it. Before I start on updating you a little bit about the maps, I want to build a little bit upon what the supervisor was talking about. We've had 3 storms now, and they've provided us moisture for regrowth. That's what we're all rooting for, right? We want to see those mountains heal. Typically, we say that it takes 3 to 5 years for a watershed to heal to the point that the risk is gone. So we need to think about 5 years. However, each time we get another growing season, the risk is reduced. Over in the watershed above over west of Goleta in the Sherpa and Whittier area, the National Weather Service has raised the thresholds for storms that could cause debris flows to 1 inch per hour. Here on the Thomas Fire, they've given us 0.8 inches per hour. And as the supervisor accurately described, the storm that we had predicted in November was supposed to be below that threshold. And I'm sure when you were here in Montecito, when that storm was occurring, you felt the intensity of that rain. You understand that that rain was pretty strong. But again, the meteorologists provided us an accurate prediction. And let me explain why. Even though it did exceed the 0.8 eventually, we have margins that we're working with. When they give us a storm that's predicted to, say, be 3/4 of an inch per hour, we know that it could be less than that or it could be more than that. But the threshold of 0.8 in a prediction is what we're concerned about in our decision making. And so if we get a 0.8-inch rainstorm and we do require an evacuation, it isn't that the 0.8 inches is going to cause debris flows of significance. It's that the margin could be greater than that, and we need to make sure that we understand that a prediction is only as good as our science is. We have the best meteorologists in the world in regards to debris flow and, frankly, wildfire. Eric Bolt, who represents the National Weather Service, they know this business now better than anyone across the country on debris flow because they have lived through it now on many, many storms. And so I want to tell you that we have high confidence in the National Weather Service and their predictions. The other thing I want to talk about is that After the storm that occurred that was over point 0.8, it did cause debris into our basins. But we have a flood control district who was out there as soon as there was light that morning and began doing a survey. And John Fry's here, and you can talk to him more about it afterwards. But they began cleaning out those debris basins. And we have also now sent a letter to the state asking for some assistance in paying for that clean out. Why do we need to be so vigilant in making sure we clean those debris basins out? Because anything we can catch in those debris basins is going to provide protection to the community. And we all know that. And so I want to assure you again that people are out there immediately following all the storms that we're going to get, and they're doing their work and looking at the channels, and they're looking at the debris basins, and they're taking care of business. And we all should feel better about that. Now, we're providing you alerting when we see storms that are coming. And we understand for some of you, the alerting is irritating and too much. And for others, you wish we'd give us a little bit more. I like more information more often. We're trying to find that Goldilocks point where we're just right on our messaging. We're not going to satisfy everybody in all ways, but we're giving out that information because our procedures that we've identified is that when a storm is coming that potentially has the ability to get to a threshold, that we want to notify you that at that moment it either is indicating it will be over the threshold or it still appears to be under and no action is necessary. But that 72-hour clock is important to us. Now that's going to be for a predicted storm. And before we talk about storms that are rapidly developing, I want to talk about the map a little bit. So with us tonight is Linda Potter. She's an engineer from Atkins Engineering. The county had a contract with Atkins Engineering that was mostly funded by FEMA. We got a 75% grant that funded the work, and then the county picked up the remaining amount. And what we asked Atkins Engineering to do was to take all the data that's been accumulated by all the sources over the last period of time, over spring and summer, take all that information, get out in the field and validate, do everything you can on your modeling that's available, and look at the map and give us a better map. Give us one that is as accurate as can be. Because we all need to remember the map that we've been living with last year was developed between the debris flow. Well, the scientists were on the ground before the debris flow working, but it was done by January 28th. It was rapidly put together using the very best science we had at that moment. But we've got more now, and so we've asked our scientists from Atkins Engineering to do their work. And I want to tell you that that work is really good. They've done a good job of doing everything that we've asked them to do. There has been changes. The good news is that 1,187 parcels were removed. So many of you have relief. You're out of the area that could be at a risk. But there are some parcels, 200, that have been added to the map. And I know that for those folks that this is a concern. And we have Linda here, and of course, John Fry and I will do the best we can to explain what the changes are in either case, why you were removed or why you were there. And so following this meeting, we're going to gather around the map. There's one in the back, one over here, and we'll share everything we can with you tonight. So we still have 1,509 parcels that are in risk areas. And when the time comes, we're going to ask you to evacuate because you have to. It's important for your own safety. And we need everybody to abide by that. And so in order to make sure you understand the situation that you're in, I want to demonstrate a little bit about our map. So how many, yeah? Okay. Okay. Okay, I think we're ready to go again. Thanks for the commercial break. So how many in here in the room here have already been online and looked at this map? Perfect. So as you know, and because we also have folks that are watching from home, et cetera, you put your address up in the top up here. And Kevin, can you give me the address for the fire station again? 595 San Ysidro is an address for the fire station. Whoops. You have to, of course, know how to type. Whoops. What is it? I'm under pressure. I'm under pressure. There we go. All right. Public education. Sorry about that, Superintendent. I'm sorry. I'm proud of my education.
You're a good example.
Thank you, sir. All right. Yeah. All right. Well, back to what we're supposed to be doing here. So as you can see, the map takes you immediately to the street location of where you're at. And then what you want to do is click on the parcel, and it will tell you whether you're in a debris flow risk area or not. And this address, for example, is, we can come up here, and this one is as well. So it's very simple to use that way. The other information that's important on the map is that we have identified all the schools. And in a little bit, the superintendent's going to come up and talk about schools, but I'm just going to give you a briefing on what the map part of it means. If they're this bright yellow in here, then it means that the school will be open in event of an evacuation. So Cold Spring School, it would be open. But if we click down here on this school, we have Our Lady of Mount Carmel. This school will close during an evacuation. And let me explain kind of just in general about the whys of this, is that we understand that the schools that are within the channels, we don't want people to be driving through the roads that could be in an evacuation area to take their kids to school and back. And so that's the reason behind it. Now, of course, following a debris flow, if unfortunately we experience this again, then of course we're going to immediately be putting out information on what the status of the schools are, and of course what the actual evacuation area would be after that. Because Cold Spring School is able to have access from outside of the general area, that's why that one remains open. And the same is for Carpinteria schools. And then we have a couple of the Pacific Graduate Institute. That one will remain open. Okay, so that's in general, and we'll hear more information about schools in a moment. If you come over to this button right here, you can turn on the layer that shows where the 1.9 debris flow actually occurred. This was data that was put together sometime in the spring by the California Geological Survey. They used varieties of sources of information, including some of the work that was done by field observers from the fire departments and from flood controls and from other sources, as well as looking at air photos and pictometry imagery, as well as LiDAR to come up with that. So you can come and toggle on and off any of these layers by going to that button over there. Let me get it. Okay, so that's kind of the general layout of it. Now there's some areas that homes were added and removed. And of course the map over there will explain it over on the paper wall here. But if you see, there were some homes that were added here east of San Ysidro that were not in the debris risk areas before. There were many in here. There were some that were added up in the upper areas. Those are some of the other areas that were located as additional places, not a lot of parcels up there. But for the most part, the areas were reduced. You can see some of the perimeter areas. There were some homes that were added in here that the debris flows were connected in here because there's the uncertainty of which way these debris flows would go. And then over, if we go into the Carpinteria area, you can see there was a significant amount of reduction over here in Carpinteria. I specifically want to point out the Santa Monica Creek. That's this creek right in here. And this is tied to the Santa Monica debris basin, which you can actually see in this air photo right in this location. The Santa Monica debris basin is our best debris basin. It's exponentially larger than the entire capacity of all the other debris basins combined. It was an engineered debris basin to be able to hold the capacity of a debris flow from the watershed above it. The other debris basins, which we so appreciate that our predecessors back in the 60s and 70s built these debris basins, they did the best they could with the land that was available and the ability to put these in under the constraints that they have. But they were not engineered the same way the Santa Monica debris basin is. So when we looked at this map, when the scientists looked at it, they figured out that they need to treat most of the debris basins as if they will be overwhelmed, much like they all were on the 1-9 debris flow. So that's why we can't reduce the risk entirely in those. But for the Santa Monica debris basin, that one was able to hold the capacity of the 1-9 debris flow, and we recognize that we can reduce the risk area. However, that said, as we all know, after the 1-9 debris flow, even the Santa Monica debris basin was charged full of material. And so if we get a debris flow that causes that same sort of impact on the Santa Monica debris basin, we will come back and redraw the risk area for the potential second storm until we get that debris basin emptied. I hope I've kind of cleared up that idea. Okay, let me go back to our notes here. Is there anything particular that somebody wants me to focus in before I leave the map? We do have the maps on the wall to talk more about. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about the storm readiness. We showed this to you at our last community meeting, and hopefully you're most all aware of this. There is a point about 72 hours for a predicted storm that we're going to put out a weather advisory. Now, sometimes that weather advisory will say, no action looks like it's going to be necessary. But again, we know that the closer we get to the storm actually arriving, then we're going to have better and better predictions. But we're going to let you know something for a storm that might concern you, that you're seeing, hey, there's a storm coming. Now, sometimes they're going to be so small and insignificant in their prediction that we may not even send out anything. But if it looks like one of those ones that could go either way, you're going to get some kind of information from us. Rather than send you the whole National Weather Service briefing, which is written in their speak, we're going to try to encapsulate it into just a simple paragraph of storm is coming, we're watching, and at this point it looks like no action is going to be necessary, or this storm has the potential to require action in the future. That'll be the ready state. What do you do at the ready state? You get ready. Now, most of you, I'm sure, are already ready. But let's just discuss a couple of things to make sure that you're ready. Do you know where you're going to go? Do you know how you're going to get hold of your family members? Have you already checked in on your neighbors that you think might need your assistance? If you need assistance, is there a neighbor who's going to be checking in on you to help you out? Do you have things like your coat and your flashlight and your boots are ready by the door to go? Do you have the things that you're going to want to grab to go at that time? Is your vehicle ready to go? Is your cell phone ready? Do you have extra batteries? Do you have a method of charging things up? All of those kinds of things that are possible. Do you have cash in case the power goes out and ATM machines aren't readily available? These are the kind of things we want you to think about when you're getting ready. About 48 hours, hopefully, we're going to get more closer to the storm. We're going to get another prediction. Then we're going to tell you to get set. We're going to issue an evacuation warning. This is that term where you will most likely get an evacuation order in the next 24 hours. Okay. That's when you're not just ready, but you're ready for an imminent event to occur at some point in the future. And if you had to even do it now, you could go now. That's the point of it. Now, at this point, the schools, of course, are fully engaged in everything we're doing. We meet with them just the same way we're talking to you. We actually have conference calls and meetings in person with the schools. I want to assure you that that part is going on as well. Of course, the storm risk team that all the leadership you see up here goes to, and we all come to a recommendation to the sheriff's office on the actions they're going to take along the way. Less than 24 hours, hopefully 24 hours, we're going to issue an evacuation order in the event that it's a storm that is going to hit the debris flow thresholds of 0.8 inches per hour. And when we issue that, it will include the time when you have to go. It may be you have to go now. And that's what you need to do. You should have already been set and ready to go. What happens if you can't go for some reason? Something is holding you up. Something's missing. An animal is holding you up. You don't have the ability to drive. Your car's not running. Something like that. We're going to set up a call center, and we're going to want to hear from you so that we can help you out. If it's an emergency and you're in harm's way, of course, we're going to want, and we have the ability to get you, we're going to want you to call 911 for emergencies, but only for emergencies. We're going to be noticing the 211 call center to be able to also provide information. But we want to be able to help you out as best you can. Remember, we want you to rely on each other too, your community, and we want you to help each other. You know those neighbors that are going to need your help, and you know those family members that are going to need your help. Okay, we're going to give you this flyer. It's both in English and Spanish. You're going to get this tonight, but our folks are going to get out, and the Chief Deputy Bonner is going to talk to you a little bit about the actions that are going to happen this weekend to try to make sure we're handing this out to the whole community. One point I want to make is don't just think about you and your family. Remember, if you have people that work on your property, they're there during the day, or they're there, maybe they even reside on your property. You know, we need to take care of everybody. So make sure that in those cases you're also providing this information to them. I want to talk briefly about a rapidly developing storm. Sometimes storms come up quickly. In November, when we got that one storm, we had thought that the storm was going to become more, less impact the next day. I remember the storm, I think, hit on a Thursday night, and then Thursday we thought Wednesday night, and we thought Thursday it was going to be pretty much okay. And then all of a sudden, we were seeing that this storm was spinning off some bands of rain. The National Weather Service and us were communicating, and at that point, we recognized that, yeah, it looks pretty intense, but it's still below thresholds. We were in our communication. That's when we were sending you messages of, listen, this is a rapidly developing storm. You need to be able to take care of yourself. In other words, we want you to be able to have a plan in case you can't evacuate. Because the last thing we want you to do in a rapidly developing storm is get on a road that's going to be in a risk area. We don't want you to get caught in the wrong place in your vehicle. So in a storm that comes up very quickly, we may only have a short amount of time to deliver a message to you. And if we can, of course, we will be doing that. The National Weather Service will be issuing a flash flood warning through WIA, and we'll be messaging through all our other methods. But in those cases, you may not have the option of evacuating. So what are your other options? Number one, we want you now to communicate with a neighbor who is out of the risk area on higher ground, in other words, and who you can quickly get to by walking. Okay, some of you that's not going to work because you're in the middle of the risk area. So we want you to have the next plan, which is, where can I go to have safe refuge in my home? Can I go to a second floor? Or can I go to the center of the home where it's going to be more protected? So think about those kinds of things. Now, we hope those storms don't happen, but they can happen, and they're incredibly hard to predict. And if you have any questions after the meeting tonight about that, Eric is here to talk with you about it. Again, I want to assure you that we're in communication all the time with our partners at the National Weather Service. Okay, now, Matt, if you want me to just invite the chief up? Yeah, Chief Deputy Bonner.
All right, so on behalf of Sheriff Brown, I really want to thank everybody for being here today, as well as the folks that are watching this on television. By being here, you guys are taking an active role in protecting yourselves, protecting your families, protecting your community. So as you've already heard, the teams that are represented by the folks that are up here and some of the folks out there also have done some incredible work over the past 11 months, preparing for what we all hope really doesn't happen. but we're preparing nonetheless. Specifically, we've worked hard to refine our policies, our procedures, and our training, both to ensure that we are better prepared to help protect the community, but also to ensure that community members understand what they need to do to protect themselves and their families. One of the key areas that we addressed internally through this process was the methods by which we plan for and conduct evacuations, and more importantly, how we communicate with our community members about those evacuations. Just a couple of quick examples. We made some changes within our dispatch center as it relates to getting all three public safety disciplines together as quickly as possible. We made it so that each and every one of them, police, fire, and EMS, can see each other on their GPS, right? So that we can get those incident commanders together as quickly as possible and come up with that unified plan of how we're going to move forward and protect the community. We've also done considerable work within our dispatch center in terms of their ability to quickly get out that messaging, the wireless emergency alerts and the aware and prepare alerts, to the point that we've actually facilitated some shifts in our culture in the dispatch center. It's one of the things that I learned when I was working in the dispatch center not too long ago, is that they are very much driven on answering those 911 calls as quickly as possible and not allowing any of them to hold. And what we've had to do is kind of shift them and say, okay, look, it's okay to take somebody out of answering 911 calls to get these emergency alerts out, because this is a critical way that we're going to help save lives. And so we've actually made that culture shift. We worked closely with Office of Emergency Management to come up with some ways to speed up that process and make sure that we're consistent in how we launch those alerts. So moving beyond just what we've done internally. So Director Lewin has already come up here and talked about the refinement of the evacuation map, the implementation of this Ready, Set, Go messaging, all of which we hope is going to make it easier for community members to understand what they need to do to protect themselves. So I'm going to spend a couple minutes just talking about how it is that we're going to try to connect with you when the time comes to let you know you need to go and you need to protect yourselves. So up here are a list of all the different ways that we're going to try to reach out to you. And we went into this in more detail last month. I'm not going to hit on all of them, but I will touch on some of the key ones. So, we have the traditional media outlets, the County of Santa Barbara TV channel that's back in the back right now, the 211 information line that was already discussed. But one of the key things that we're going to use are these aware and prepare alerts. And they can come from the Office of Emergency Management, and they can also come from our dispatch center for these rapidly evolving storms that may pop up. They allow us to prepare or send out information into the community through robocalls, through text messages, cell phones and landlines are getting those, emails. We can put quite a bit of information in the aware and prepare alerts that tell you what you need to do, what's coming, and what you need to do to stay safe. The one caveat to that is that you have to sign up in order to get those aware and prepare alerts. Montecito is actually doing a pretty good job of getting the community signed up on it, but we want to make sure that everybody is signed up on it. So make sure your family, your friends, your neighbors, anybody who you care about, make sure that they're checking to ensure that they are signed up on that aware and prepare. So when it comes time to go and the evacuation order is made, we're going to use that wireless emergency alert to push out the initial piece of information. The challenge with the wireless emergency alert is that we can only utilize about 90 characters, and that really, it sounds like it's plenty, but it really isn't. And just to give you a quick example, this could be a potential one. Heavy rainfall occurring in the Montecito area, flash flood warning, take action to stay safe. And that's all we can send within the wireless emergency alert. We are then going to follow that up with the aware and prepare emails, robocalls, and all that stuff. But again, you only get those if you have signed up. So if you didn't sign up, all you're going to get is the wireless emergency alert. And one of the things that we've seen is that people think that because they get they have received a wireless emergency alert in the past, they think they're signed up for Aware and Prepare, but they aren't. So we really need people to go to readysbc.gov, check it, .org. Check it, go to the Aware and Prepare, and make sure that you're signed up for it. So we also plan to utilize the emergency alert system. That is the radio channels and the television channels where you hear the tone come across and the ticker tape telling you what to do and or the verbal announcement on the radio. The other one that we want to talk about is the Radio Ready program. This is where the Office of Emergency Management has teamed up with local radio stations who have generator backup. And the beauty of the Radio Ready program is that when everything else fails, and we had that occur this last time, television's down, the internet's down, your cell phones aren't working, you have no communication. These radio channels are still on the air and they're transmitting. But you have to go get yourself a battery-operated radio. I like to liken it back when I was in the 80s, and I thought it was cool because I had one of those little boom boxes. It's time for all of us to go to Costco, Amazon, whatever it may be that we want to do, and get a small battery-operated radio so that we can tune in. These are all channels that are participating in the Radio Ready program. You know, once you get the radio, obviously what you want to do is check these channels and find the ones that have good reception, both at your work, at your home, or any other place you might be out in the community. Again, when all else fails, this is what we're going to be using to push out information into the community about what's going on and what you guys need to do in order to be safe. So finally, when it comes down to it, you know, whenever it's feasible to do so, we're going to utilize door-to-door notification to effect evacuations. We're going to have our deputies and our volunteer search and rescue teams out in the affected neighborhoods, knocking on doors and using loudspeakers to send out the message. And that's a good segue to something that Director Lewin talked about, and that is that this weekend, our search and rescue team is working with a number of volunteer organizations, including MARAG and the Bucket Brigade, as well as a number of just community volunteers, and they're going to be going out door to door to each and every one of the residences, the properties that are in the evacuation zone. And they're going to leave information. They're going to hopefully be able to talk to people and let people know that they are in the evacuation zone and give them some information about what they can do to be safe. And I believe that if anybody wants to participate in that, we can see you afterwards, and we can get you set up to come help and participate in that. So just to close things out, I want to reiterate that although the organizations that have been involved in this process have done great work in preparing for this, preparing for something we hope doesn't happen, it is just as important that community members take an active role in preparing and protecting themselves and their families. Take some time to go to readysbc.org, learn about the preparations that you and your family can make, sign up to receive those Aware and Prepare alerts, and most importantly, begin making plans today about how you're going to protect yourself and your family. You don't want to wait until you receive the wireless emergency alert telling you it's time to go to start thinking about how you're going to protect yourself. The best time to do that is right now. So thank you very much for allowing us to be here.
I just want to illustrate for a second why the chief is so, why this walk this weekend is so important. So after the debris flow, there was about 18% of Montecito signed up to Aware and Prepare. That's gone up to over 60% by a variety of means. We've done everything, done newspaper ads, mailed it out to everybody in Montecito. 60% is very high for a voluntary service that you have to sign up for. But that still means that 40% are not signed up. And if we've mailed them something, if they've heard about it on TV a million times, we need to go to them in person. And so this project, and it's not just Mirage and the Bucket Brigade, which we really appreciate, but also Habitat, and of course Santa Barbara Search and Rescue, Santa Barbara County Search and Rescue involved. But we need you involved, 9 to 5 right here. Anybody can show up and help walk and reach these folks. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, Anthony Rainey with our Superintendent of Montecito Union School District.
Hello, and once again, welcome to Montecito Union School. We are very happy to be able to serve the community with providing a space in meetings like this because the community has always supported us so very much. So welcome, and I'm glad you're here. I'd also like to say I'm appearing on behalf of Susan Salcido, our County Superintendent of Schools, and I know if she were here, she'd want to make sure to take this opportunity to thank Director Lewin for all the work that he has done for all of the schools, public and private. You've always made it a real important priority to give us the information that we need and also to listen with feedback and ideas. So thank you, and thank you to your team for always doing such a great job with that. Yes, please. And I also want to thank all of you because this community is strong when we all stand strong together. So thank you for being here and being a part of keeping our students and our community safe. As was already stated, there were a couple changes for schools with the new maps. We're happy that Carpinteria will be able to stay open now with the new information, the most updated information. Again, some of the schools that aren't in the red zone will also close or be evacuated in the case of exceeding those thresholds. One of those schools is this school, Montecito Union School, as well as Blanca Lower School, Crane, and Our Lady of Mount Carmel. Again, the reason for that is because even though the school itself may be safe to operate, getting in and out of the school might be dangerous for both our kids and for the parents. And this main artery going through town is going to be very important in the case of an emergency. So if you have hundreds of parents going on the roads at the same time that the community needs some support, that's going to maybe delay some emergency vehicles. So that was a really good decision, and thank you for all that forethought thinking through that. Just as you in your private homes need to think about those rapidly developing thunderstorms, we at the schools are thinking about that as well to make sure that our students and our staff members stay safe in that eventuality. I want to reassure you that all of us have worked with the Sheriff's Department, the Fire Department, to create rapidly approaching storm plans. At this school, we have some of our buildings that have 2 stories. So we have 3 different places on campus where we have our students go. We have food there, we have water there, we have communication systems there, we have some portable bathroom facilities so that we can keep students safe for even days if that's what's required. So I do want to reassure you that that is not just the case here at Montecito's Union School, but that's all of the schools in the area have taken those precautions. We just did our second debris flow drill. It's not something that the students look forward to because it does trigger some of their emotions, but we are ready, and we got some great feedback from the sheriff and the fire department on things that we could do even better next time. So we're working on putting those changes into effect. One very important thing to keep in mind in the case of that rapidly occurring storm, if we bring our students into those areas, we will be sending out a communication that parents, please do not come pick up your kids. Because if it's not safe for the kids, it's also not safe for the parents to drive to school. So we want to try to send the message to the community. We will send that message out, but if parents come to pick up the kids from school, we won't be able to release them because we'll be busy keeping them safe in those areas. So that's an important message for the community. Once again, we do feel that we want to keep our students physically safe, but here in this community, we also want to keep them mentally and emotionally safe. So as we approach the anniversary, some of our kids and families will be understandably triggered. And so we have multiple layers of support, some support in the classrooms, also some support outside of the classrooms if they need a higher level of service. And again, that's true of all the area schools, not just here at Montecito Union School. Thank you for your attention and for being here tonight.
Thank you, Anthony. Some great stuff happening with the schools. Next up, we have Suzanne Grimacy here with our County Department of Behavioral Wellness to talk to us a little about what's going on in that area.
Thank you and good evening. At this time of the year during our disasters last year, Director Rob Lewin shared a quote with the community that was that during times when really bad things happen or disasters, that we can choose to be victims or we can choose to be survivors. We were at a parent meeting at Santa Barbara High School a few nights ago, and I shared this there, but I think especially important to remember that now, because this is truly a group of survivors. And I'm guessing that many of you in this room, either individually or collectively, tapped last year at this time into an inner strength that perhaps you didn't even know existed or that you had. And through that, an amazing amount of what we call resiliency has developed, and that's what will carry us through this year and when bad things happen going forward. This time of the year is a wonderful time of the year. It's a holiday season. It triggers all kinds of memories. But for us, it will always, I think, at different levels, also trigger some unsettling feelings for some, thoughts, memories. Those feelings trigger or signal to us that we're still working through a recovery and a healing process that's very normal. The feelings that people experience and what we call anniversary reactions, many times people ask, well, what are those? How are they different than the event themselves? And they really are not. Some of those things may be feeling tearful, feeling sad, feeling numbness, difficulty concentrating, feeling irritable, fearful, even physical symptoms, headaches, stomach aches. And I share this as reminders that these things really are very normal, but oftentimes they catch us very off guard at times when we're not expecting them. The anniversary date is not necessarily what will trigger those emotions and feelings. It's this time of year. So these can be experienced days before, weeks before, days after, weeks after what we might consider an anniversary event. Some things we can do: talk to others about how you feel. Be involved in forums like this where things are being talked about. For some, it might be easier to journal or to blog, but to share those feelings and connect our reactions to how we're feeling inside. Other things is this time of the year, any public disaster that's occurred will trigger media, likely sharing reminiscence of an event, pictures, images. Those things can also be very triggering. So for many, it's easier to just turn the TV off and to not pay attention to them. Encourage, especially for others in your life and children, encourage good self-care. Take care of yourself, especially so at this time. Last year, when the Thomas Fire began, followed by the 1/9 debris flow, we formed what we call a community wellness team. The many organizations, and now we've got about 15 organizations a part of this group, knew that there was no way any one organization could meet the needs of the community alone. And even if we could meet them as one organization, we wouldn't have done a good job. So a group formed, and through that, who's here tonight from the community wellness team? Cottage Hospital, Santa Barbara Response Network, Hope 805, and those are just some of the organizations. But through forming this collaboration, we have everything from immediate crisis counseling. We have our Hope 805 outreach teams out in the community and in the schools. We have short-term counseling, long-term counseling, all the way through the continuum to Cottage Hospital, who offered and is offering an intensive outpatient program of groups. So we recognized that there's no way we could do this alone, but we could together. And the reason I share this with you is that the community wellness team still meets regularly and is still available for you, for all of us as support. The best way to reach out and garner that support is to call the community wellness team Hope 805 phone number, which is 805-845-2973. Again, 845-2973. By calling Hope 805 and sharing what your needs are or how you're feeling, they'll be able to connect you with the right level of resource and the right thing to meet your individual needs. 211 continues to also be an excellent resource to call that is aware of the resources in the community and can help connect people. The last thing I'll share, the Community Wellness Team, launched through ITCG, has a website called South County Are You All Right? I think I'm saying that the right way. But the Are You All Right website was designed as a way to check in with the community to see who is all right or who could use extra support and to connect them to that. It's also a place where people can go onto the website and they can write about their experiences, they can read the experiences of others, and they can realize that they're not alone. So those are a couple of resources, but most important, take good care and know that there's still support available in the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Suzanne. There are many things that we're really proud of as our team is up here, and our efforts in behavioral wellness are one of my most proudest endeavors as part of this team. So with that, we're going to be around most of the evening, so don't feel like you have to ask a question up here. If you'd rather approach one of the team members after the meeting, feel free to do so. But at this point in the meeting, I'd like to hear a little bit more from the community, and hopefully we can answer some of the questions you may have. If we could get you to go to a microphone, that way the people at home can hear the question that may have the same questions, that would be great. There's 2 microphones, one on each side of the room, and that way we can be sure to answer your questions.
My name is Bob Hazard. I'm with the Montecito Journal. The question that I get from the community most often, I guess there's 2 of them. One is, how come we're so lucky to have such a good team at the county as first responders? And I think the people of Montecito really feel that way, and that's not just a suck up to please you guys. The second question I get is regards the Partnership for Resilient Communities and the ring nets that are being installed, the 15 of them. And I realize that that's a private endeavor, but the question becomes twofold. One, will we get those installed before the end of this winter? They're now, I guess, held up in Fish and Game for permitting. And the second question is, there's a claim that those ring nets are going to double our debris basin capacity. And I'm wondering, Tom Favoram's not here tonight, but I'm wondering if you could comment on that question.
So, Mr. Hazard, we've got a little bit of an update for you on the nets. I know the Partnership for Resilient Communities has been going through all of the regulatory processes to make sure that that some of the temporary infrastructure that they're going to install is being done in the most sensitive ways possible, and hopefully within the next week we should have some information on how that's going through its process. I anticipate hearing some news within a week from all of the regulatory agencies on that. And the second, I'd like John Fry to come up and just give a real brief response to the capacity, at least what we understand as far as the nets are concerned.
Good evening. I'm John Fry with the Santa Barbara County Flood Control District. I believe the question is the volume that is proposed to be provided by the nets in the project that the Resiliency Partnership is pursuing. I can speak most intelligently to the volumes of the flood control district's basins, and I know that the basins, say for example, at Cold Springs is on the order of 20,000 cubic yards. San Isidro is about 10,000 yards. I can go down the line. I'm not all that familiar with what the Resiliency Partnership is proposing. I know they're proposing 15 now. I know they're planning or hoping to come in with another 50 or 60 in 44, okay. And I really don't feel comfortable speaking about what the resiliency is proposing, but I do believe if you add up all the numbers that they've got in their report, it probably does exceed the capacity of what the flood control basins is, but that's about as exact as I can get with an answer.
County, in communication with our office, County P&D has made it very clear, planning and development, that they are expediting any permits on the county end. We cannot tell Fish and Game what to do, but we have even changed some of the order of procedure of what is needed when in order to get a permit, in order to facilitate the hope that we can get some of these deployed before this season's storms are upon us.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. Next question.
Hi, I'm George Isaac. Great presentation tonight. Thanks for all the good communications. My question is real simple. With all the robocalls, I have my cell phone at night by my bed, but I have the volume off, and I just wondered, will it work through and wake us up with, I know they had a test with the president, I think, recently. Mine never rang, and so I'm not sure.
So, Mr. Isaac, I'm going to let Rob Lewin answer that. I would think we know what the answer is, but we're going to let him answer that.
Thanks for the question about alerting. So in general, here's what we want you to do with your cell phones. One, we definitely do not want you to turn off your cell phone. Don't turn it off. If your cell phone keeps you awake at night because it's buzzing and beeping and doing things, we understand that. We would prefer, of course, that you still left the phone ringer part of it on. And the wireless emergency alert will work if it's in silent mode. It will wake up a silented phone. It will not do anything to a phone that is completely off. Now, this issue of not all the phones being activated by a wireless emergency alert, we're concerned about that. We know that let me ask, during when the presidential alert came out a couple months ago, how many of you in here your phone activated? I'll start with a question. And how many of them didn't activate? So we have, about 20-30% of the phones that for some reason aren't activating. And I can tell you personal experience that I have two phones, a work phone and a personal phone, and they're both Verizon, and they're both essentially the same, and one activated, the other did not, and they were sitting next to each other. So we've asked this question of Cal OES, which is not responsible for the program, but we've asked them to ask FEMA and FCC, and we've also asked Verizon to look into it. And at this point, unfortunately, we don't have any answers for it. That is why, as the supervisor has said over and over again, we need you to sign up for all methods possible, aware and prepare alerts, through awareandprepare.org, or go to readysbc.org and sign up so that you have those coming. And if you have a landline, we're going to ring your landline through robocalls, but there's a delay in robocalls whether they're going to your cell phone or to your landline, because it takes a few minutes to process all the hundreds of or maybe thousands of phone calls that are making. Could take 10 or 15 minutes. So we're going to use WIA because it wakes up the most phone, and then we're going to issue aware and prepare alerts. So again, don't turn your phone off ever. And if you're going to put it in silent or vibration mode at night, that's a good thing to do.
Thank you, Mr. Lewin. Thank you, Mr. Isaac. Next question.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
My name is Robert Tufel. I live at 273 Santa Rosa Lane. I just have one observation. I'm a homeowner here as well as a homeowner in Malibu. You know what happened in Malibu. The community, as a very, very long-term resident in Malibu, Montecito doesn't know how blessed they are having this talent pool protecting life, limb, and property. Mistakes are made, but the skill, talent, financial resources that have been brought to bear, this community doesn't know how fortunate they are. I'm working through problems in Malibu, friends, neighbors, my mother, what have you. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Everything that's not happening is still not happening. And all the planning that you folks are doing, trying to stay ahead of the curve, they're 50 years behind. Montecito is blessed to have you guys with your steady hands at the wheel, not letting go and going, oh, Jesus, you handle it. And you all deserve a great round of applause.
Thank you, Mr. Tufel. Thank you very much, Mr. Tufel. There's a large team behind this team as well that really appreciate your comments tonight. So with that.
My name is Stuart Maybond. We're Middle Road residents for years. And by the way, we're also veteran Malibu property owners for 20 years before this. And I can totally endorse the last gentleman's comments. It was true all the time we lived there. And by God, it was true in this last, it was terrible. We know a lot of people there. That wasn't the reason I stood up. The reason I stood up was we're not in the orange zone on Middle Road. So there must be a triggering point at which we get the evacuations. And I'm wondering, where's the next threshold in this game?
Thank you for your question. I think there's a lot of people wondering that, and Rob's going to talk a little bit about the threshold that the model was based upon.
Thank you for that question. I wish we'd addressed it, and if I don't get it right, I'm going to ask the chief from Montecito Fire to come on up and help me out here. But we have principles that we abide by. The Storm Risk Decision Team has come up with evacuation principles, and we've had these all following the 1-9 debris flow and the Thomas Fire. And that, number one, we're only going to evacuate when it is absolutely necessary, when it is for your safety. Number two, we're only going to evacuate only those folks that need to evacuate. Number three, we're going to return you home as soon as we can, as soon as it's safe, not when it's perfect. In other words, we're not going to wait for all the utilities necessarily be working or the roads to be perfect, but when it's safe, we're going to get you home as soon as we can. And then we're going to provide you with all the information that we have. We're going to be every bit of information that we can provide along the way of everything we're doing. With that, this year, as you see, that we don't have the areas between the channels included in evacuation, and they're not in the risk area. So if you're in those areas, if you're in the risk areas between the channels and you don't feel comfortable being potentially isolated for many days, then we want you to take it upon yourself to say, it's just not where I want to be, and I'm going to leave when those evacuation orders are going out. And you'll know about them because we're going to notify the whole community, not just the areas and the channels. So you'll be able to make those kinds of decisions yourself. In the event that we have a debris flow of significance that causes damage and destruction, then we will be quickly, our incident management team, chief and both chiefs up here, and fire and law, they will be establishing evacuation zones based on where that is. As you know, we originally evacuated all of Carpinteria, and we had evacuation orders and warnings in Carpinteria and Montecito. But then when we saw that the damage was not in Carpinteria, we were lifting those areas along the way. And then as we could move through sending people home, we continually changed the evacuation zone. So the answer to the question is, as soon as we identify, we understand where the damage is, then we'll be reestablishing those evacuation areas to be consistent with where the damage is. Anything else to add, Chief? Okay.
Thank you. Next question.
I have two questions. One, this new map, will it be updated as the mountain starts to refoliate?
Yes, I'm going to answer that one, and the answer is yes, it absolutely will be.
And what will be the intervals? Like every 2 years, or?
So we're gonna have to monitor how the hillsides are growing back. We're going to use our bear and our work team scientists to actually go out in the field and get up on the mountain and take some hikes and take a look at how the regeneration of the vegetation is coming along. And so they're going to be periodically doing that. And then as soon as we get some notable changes in that, we'll take it to our storm risk team that you guys have heard a lot about, and talk to the team about changing the thresholds, much like we did this last year.
And then my other question is, when you're looking at the map, you're taking one particular red zone that comes down, and you start to work out towards the edge. Does that mean that you think that free flow will be or more shallow, lesser shallow? Will it be the same as what's happening right in the middle of the free flow?
That's a super great question. So the dynamics of a debris flow are that they're coming down very violently from the top. Speeds of 25 to 40 miles per hour, I've heard, can occur. They're loaded with a large debris at the top, big rocks, as we all saw, any other kind of debris that's on the mountains, and full of heavy mud. But as the debris starts to come down the mountain, the larger material starts falling away, right? The debris acts like a dam in that it's being pushed along and the material is spilling around it. But as you've pointed out, the material spilling around it is going to be lighter. You know, it's not going to, and then eventually, as we all saw, the debris down in the flatter areas, down by example Coast Village and the highway, that's a more soupy, muddy, and not loaded down with the heavy giant rocks and debris. So there is some physics to what you're asking in that. It is different. There's much more violence, obviously, up in the higher areas, and it starts to lose its momentum as it makes its way to the ocean. Doesn't mean that it's still not dangerous. It is down because people, as we know. And it is still obviously destructive in that, if you have 4 or 5 feet of mud in your house, that's damaging. So, and we have an expert, Linda Potter here, and John Fry, both engineers, who, if you want to know more, I hope I got that right. If you want to know more about the physics in a more scientific way, they're here for you. Okay.
I think it's, since Tom Farum isn't here, I will tell you exactly what Tom Farum would say, is that it's important to remember that a debris flow is not the only scenario that we have to prepare for. It is not even the most likely scenario that we have to prepare for. The more likely scenario is a flood, not a debris flow, that has a decent amount of debris with it, but a flood. And that's where the FEMA advisory map can show you some of the gradients, of course, that affect all of our decisions in life. If you want to see some of the difference that was basically the result of a debris-laden flood scenario under which the bridges in the upper watershed got plugged. That's right.
Okay, thank you for your questions as well. So with that, I'm not seeing any other folks head to the microphone, so we're going to be here. Our team is here. And if you think of a question after tonight, please contact us. There's been several different phone numbers up on the website there. And we thank you for coming down tonight and being part of this discussion. We appreciate you, and stay safe. Thank you.